Hello everyone, my name's Blackwatch, this is take number 7, and we're here today with our tier list for the defending operators in Siege. So it's going to be the bottom to top, top to bottom, and we're going to break down why they're in the tiers that they are, and then the next video we'll be looking at the attacking operators and doing the same thing, and in the next video we're going to be looking at DLC operators and basically doing a buyer's guide for those new players who don't have any of the DLCs yet and are looking to step into the world of premium content, or they've just spent a lot of time saving up right now. So, starting off this particular list, we have the worst attacking operator in the game, arguably the worst operator in the game, though Tachanka might argue with that again, and that is Knuck. She's awful. She has a bad weapon selection, the shotgun's crap, the SMG's crap. The secondary is nice, but ultimately you can't run around and win games with a secondary unless you're a shield. And the reason why they win that is because they have a big piece of metal that can't be shot through. Knuck doesn't have that. Instead, she has a very, very loud gadget for her to use that does not enough and just doesn't do anything really to help her teammates. The times when her gadget does work, so what? You've managed to avoid a camera. Like, it's not like you're being pressured like you are with drones when you're playing as Vigil, where you can actually make use of the fact that people will have to drone into your position to find you. Folk just use cams to check general positions, and the chances of them sitting on cams and relying on them solely as an intel tool is just not there. You don't sneak up on people on cams, and she's not that quiet when she is using the ability, so the chances of you walking into the room without folk noticing is next to nil. So yeah, bottom of the tier, very, very weak, needs to be worked on immediately. Next one is Fuse. I like Fuse, but they nerfed the shield combo. The PMM is a fantastic pistol, not so fantastic when it has a 50% extra time to actually ADS versus anyone else who's using that pistol in a normal situation. So shield fuse is dead, thankfully, for some people, because it's a beast when it gets brought in, especially with that hip fire. And so his alternative is the AK-12. It's a good gun, but again, it's not really great to be running around as 3 armor when you're going to be playing with a normal gun, because he's just too slow to be worth anything, really. And his gadget doesn't offer enough to be worth anything either. It's too easy to dodge, it's too loud, and if you're using it on Windows, which is where it tends to be most effective, you're not really going to get much of a chance to do anything before your head gets removed, because you're so goddamn loud when you plant that charge. You're just a free kill. So Fuse, unfortunately, unviable as well. Amaru is the next one, which might be controversial for some people, but it's really not for me. Her gadget is solely beneficial to herself, and it's a 50-50 dice roll on whether or not, well, she said coin toss instead of dice roll, but who cares, on whether or not you're actually going to survive when you use the damn thing. Because if you jump through that window and you have droned, there's every chance that from the point you drone to the point you jump in, someone has just appeared out of nowhere. And if you haven't droned, which is where you would be trying to get in as fast as possible, which is what people say is her best thing, is being able to rush people and catch them off guard, it's even worse of a 50-50, because you probably are going to get caught off guard, because that gadget is so loud when it takes out the window. If you're traversing any real distance, so you're going from the first floor to the top floor, it's loud, it's not that helpful, and to be honest, stairs aren't that bad. There are certain sites where she works, those sites don't occur often enough, and so for me, too much of a risk, unviable. Blitz is the next one, got hit hard by the shield nerf, and that is the main reason why he's down here. He's been consistently nerfed since he got his big rework where he could sprint and flash people. That's probably not a bad thing for the sake of the game, because he's a very frustrating operator to deal with. But at the same time, I think this last one was just a step too far. I think the flash nerf was already good enough. I think the melee nerf did something, and I think this is just the final nail in the coffin for Big Elias. Just not good enough. He's Mont, but without the extendable shield, and that is not good. So, unviable, unfortunately. Speaking of Mont, he is the first of our limited viability operators. The shield is the only thing that keeps him here, and that's because when you're using that shield, you have very, very good 1v1 ability when it comes to a post-plant situation. You can also basically be a walking drone for the attackers who can't be killed or without some clever explosive use, and most of the time you'll be able to deal with that by either bouncing it back to them or just backing up enough to not die. And you can also enable some plants that are otherwise very difficult if he's not there. But he has the same problem that all the other shield operators have now, which is that offensively he's almost worthless because he's far too slow into that ADS, and so he has to be down in limited viability because he just can't carry himself the way that he used to be able to, where he probably would have been sitting around usually viable for me. So yeah, limited viability for Mont. IQ's the next one. IQ's a weird operator. She goes through phases of being picked and not being picked, and the reason is that she has very good guns, to be fair, and when she had frags, she was very, very strong for that reason. As long as Echo exists, she will always have a place in the game, because as long as you can see the yokai drone, you're going to be doing something useful. Same with goo mines and all those kind of things. But until the point that they add in the functionality for her gadget to be used alongside her assault rifle, and until the point they decide that they're going to add in some sort of gadget disabling ability with her RED, she's still just going to be a Thatcher who can't do what Thatcher does and can just look at things and tell people that they're there and then not deal with them. So that is the problem with IQ. But as I said, hard counter to Echo, so in that situation she's definitely viable. Would I pick her over other people? Probably not. Then you've got Ying. Ying can be hard countered by Jaeger. That's the big reason why she's down here, because if you're getting countered by someone who's almost always picked because he's so strong, then you're going to struggle to do well, and that is her biggest flaw, other than the fact that flashbangs are really inconsistent, and unfortunately Candelas are no different in this particular one. They are an inconsistent gadget. They will not always flash people when they should flash people, and sometimes it does flash people when it shouldn't flash people, which is nice for you, but you can't really tell. There's not a clear enough definition of what allows someone to be flashed and what doesn't, so it's not something I would bet my life on, and so she is not someone I would bet my life on. She was very strong when smoke plants were a thing, but slowly but surely they took away smokes from people, and now smoke plants aren't really a thing as much as they used to be, so definitely not there anymore. Speaking of smokes, Glaz is the last limited viability person. He still has his smokes, he can still have fun with his smokes, but he can't entry frag anymore, and that was his biggest strength, was the ability to just be terrifying inside that big cloud of death. He isn't really in the cloud of death anymore now. He's just sitting there a bit unloved, for good reason. He has a fairly weak DMR as his primary weapon. His gadget's completely reliant on 2 secondary gadgets that he will fly through very, very quickly, and then he's sitting there with a rifle that just has slightly better target acquisition than other rifles, and the ability to see slightly better is not really an ability that's worth trading an entire operator out for. So Glaz, in some situations, in some sites, on some angles, can be useful, but not useful enough to put him anywhere but limited viability. So the first person in usually viable, which is the next tier up, is going to be Capitao. I like Capitao. He's an interesting gadget, but there are two things wrong with him. His guns suck, and the gadget is too slow to swap between munitions. As long as those two things are the case, he's going to struggle. I think they should reduce the amount of time it takes to swap between smokes and flames, and I think they should buff either his para or his LMG. Regardless of what they choose to do, I still think he's a fun operator to use, and he definitely has his uses, especially since they fixed the propagation of his flames, but it's just a little bit too difficult to justify over other people. Although he is an operator with a very high skill gap, and there's a big curve there for people to come in and absolutely dominate with him, so definitely usable. Just try him out, and maybe one day he'll be back to his former self when he had frags and was just scary and always got played. And speaking of frags, Finca is the next one. Finca is bogged down by a gadget that's very difficult to understand for new players. It's a big treasure trove of buffs that aren't defined. Obviously the most noticeable ones are the fact that there's a temporary health buff, and there's a recoil reduction and a reload speed increase. But there are loads of other ones as well, as things like it can help cleanse flashbang effects, it can do this, it can do that. But the two biggest things that make her difficult to justify, used to be three biggest things, are Echo can take her out of the ability, and any of the teammates that are afflicted by it, or I shouldn't say afflicted, affected, since affliction is a negative thing and it's late. And Lian can take her out of it as well. So both those operators can negate the effects of the ability, and Smoke, if he's picked, which he doesn't get picked as often, but when he does get picked, can deal, I think, his double damage with his smokes to a target who is currently adrenal surged. So that makes her difficult to justify, along with the fact that her weapons aren't the best, and yeah, all of those things add up. But when she does work, she can be helpful, having a nice bit of recoil reduction, a little bit of extra health, and pulling in those clutch revives from range can be the difference between a round being won and a round being lost. And her frags are nice. If she didn't have frags, she'd probably be down and limited, but she does have frags, so I'm going to put her up here as usually viable. No one's going to hate you for picking Finca, as long as you use her properly. Maverick is now usually viable, used to be always viable, and you could make an argument for immensely strong, but they nerfed the amount of sound that he makes. They've made it a lot louder, and they've nerfed his weapon switch so that he can't actually start engaging through his kill holes as fast as he used to, and both of those things have made him very predictable and very easy to counter. You can still catch people off guard if you're making a hole in one place and your target is across the room, but then you've got to spend time droning before you make the hole and all these different things that you have to juggle, and it just makes him difficult to justify. He's an operator with too much prep for not enough gain, and one who basically makes a kill hole that is the perfect size of his head, and it's almost always going to be directly placed against his head because you need to look through if you're going to get any use out of it. So usually viable, very good as an alternative to Thatcher or Twitch. People don't seem to realise this. His only real counter in that regard is Kaid, but very, very strong in that situation. You can do well, and if you're stuck for hard breacher, you can definitely do the job, but for his kill hole stuff, which is what he specialised in, he's just not the same anymore, so usually viable. And Blackbeard. Blackbeard in the early days would have been immensely strong and probably would have had a tier of his own, to be honest, because it's just crazy how strong he was. Slowly but surely he's been nerfed to the state where he is now, where I think he is balanced. I think the ability to withstand the headshot is always going to be broken in Siege terms, because you're not supposed to withstand headshots in a game where you can be killed by a single headshot, and he breaks the rules, and so he'll always be good from that point of view. But they've done well to make his weapon suite so unappetizing that it makes up for the fact that he can withstand that headshot, because whilst you have that, and you will normally win a gunfight as a result of being able to tank some shots with his face shield, you're not going to be sitting there feeling happy with an excessively recoiled and underpowered Mark 17 assault rifle, or the even more joyful SR25 DMR, which is fine but is still a DMR and has all the trappings of a DMR and has a lot of recoil for a DMR. So bad weapons, scary gadget when used properly, but again, that's reliant on him actually hitting his shots, and with these weapons you might not always get a kill, but he's definitely not awful. He is usually viable. Perfect tier for him now. Going up to always viable, you got folk who are a lot more reliable, and you'll be more likely to pick them for various reasons. But at the top I've got two people sitting together. Those are Sledge and Buck. When I say at the top, I'm not really doing this in any particular order, but yeah, phrasing. These guys are both your soft breaching specialists, and they both have their own quirks. Obviously Buck is better at vertical destruction, whereas Sledge is better at horizontal destruction, even though that doesn't really come into play very often. But he can also counter Evil Eyes and Castle Barricades. Obviously Evil Eyes are a little bit more important than Castle Barricades, but it's still something to be said about the differences in applicability to the two gadgets. Buck is definitely the better breacher, but Sledge can take things out that Buck can't. So they balance each other quite well, and they definitely deserve to be in this tier. No one's going to hate you for picking them. It's almost always helpful to have at least one of them on your team composition, because they'll do a job that other people tend not to be able to do, and they'll do it very efficiently. So definitely bring either of these guys along. Then you've got Ashe. Ashe is just, she's a workhorse. In times past, I would have put her in immensely strong, but she's had some balancing passes to her weapons that have made her a bit more reasonable. She still has high speed, she has a small hitbox, and she still has a very, very strong weapon in the form of the R4C. It doesn't have ACOG anymore, and yeah, I think she deserves to be an always viable rather than immensely strong. I think there are other people who offer more than her, but she's always going to be helpful. Good, simple gadget, easy to understand, good weapons, very fast, small hitbox, just an easy operator to pick up and say, yeah, this is a good one. So, always viable. Beano is one who I'm going to put in there as well. Intel gadgets are always strong, and her Intel gadget is particularly strong. The only person who doesn't get caught by it is Echo, but Echo tends not to be roaming, so it doesn't really come into play when it comes to him. Hacking cameras is nice. It's not ever going to be the difference between winning a round and losing a round, because it tends to be very late that you'll actually get the hack off. But if you do get it off early, it can be a nice little tool for some extra confidence if you've got someone sitting there monitoring the cams, especially if it's a team that like to put cams near their positions. That's the ideal scenario, because you're going to get eyes on them all the time, or they're going to have to sacrifice their own intel to make sure that you don't get it for yourself. Yeah, just decent. She doesn't have the best weapons. The Mark 14 doesn't hit very hard, but it is very, very accurate and very, very fast, so I do like that. You can run an angle grip on it and not feel bad about it. And the CZ75, definitely not the most easy thing to control, but it'll do the job at close range when you need it to do the job, so it's perfectly fine. And she has frag grenades now, and frag grenades are just an instant buff for any operator, so a good pick, always viable. Jackal, there's a reason he always gets banned. It's not necessarily because he's crazy strong, it's because he is annoying and he puts roamers under pressure. He puts anyone under pressure. Having Jackal track you is a nightmare, and it occupies a lot of your round. It's spent either hoping that you're not being chased or trying not to be chased. And so putting that pressure on people with a push of a button, obviously you do have to expose yourself to do it, but not for very long. And he's backed up by one of the strongest assault rifles in the game in the form of the C7E, and a secondary shotgun that can basically turn him into a de facto buck on the spot. So he's filled with value, he's pretty damn strong, definitely always viable, edging on immensely strong at times, but the gadget doesn't swing quite as hard as other people's gadgets do. It's just helpful in general, so always viable. And Lian, he plays a similar role from a harassment point of view, but he's better for the post plant. So if you've got that plant down and you set off the E1D, that is a period of time when the defenders cannot push for the retake, and time is money in Siege, especially with the 7-second defusal timer rather than the 5-second that we used to have. You really got to make your seconds count when you're trying to retake on a site, and so being forced to stand still or being forced to give away your position is a difficult decision to make, and it's one that you can throw at the enemy, and hopefully you can capitalize on whatever they decide to go with. So yeah, not as strong as he used to be, but still a problem, still pretty strong, so he's going to be up there and always viable. His weapons are a little bit better now as well. The 417 had an ammunition increase, and that's made all the difference to it actually being viable. Next on the list, Gridlock. I like Gridlock quite a lot. I think both of her weapons are pretty good. I think the fact that the LMG has a magazine is a huge difference maker to it being a viable weapon. Obviously it has less ammunition than the normal M249, but it doesn't make too much of a difference because she can just clack the magazine out and clack another one back in. Her gadget is a bit like Nomads, but just not quite as strong. But in certain situations, if you chuck a smoke down and throw it on the ground in a site where someone's having to move around and they're panicking, sometimes they can just kill themselves without even knowing. And when it does work, it's very, very nice. Plus, if nothing else, you'll hear them destroying it if they have to go through. You know, it can cover your flanks, it can cover the post plant, it can do all sorts of stuff. Very versatile. Doesn't get countered by Jaeger. It's just a good gadget, and she has decent guns, so yeah, good pick. And that shotgun is crazy. Secondary shotgun's very, very good. The second last tier is usually essential. It's kind of self-explanatory. This is the hard breachers and the anti-electronics people. So Twitch, Thatcher for anti-electronics, and Hibana and Thermite for the hard breach. You need to run a combination of two of these people, obviously one from the hard breach and one from the anti-elec. It doesn't really matter which combination you pick, but the differences between them are, if you have a team that runs mute, probably best to run Thatcher. If you have a team that runs electrified stuff, Twitch will do the job quite well. Thatcher will also do the job, but Twitch can sometimes be a bit easier to handle in some anti-bandit tricking situations and things like that. But she's also a bit more risky because Thatcher can't have his EMP grenades destroyed unless he throws them into an ADS, which shouldn't happen because that's not really stuff that good Thatcher players do. Whereas Twitch can have her drone shot, and losing the drone is losing your entire ability on the spot, and that's rough. Obviously you do get a second chance, but it's still a hard trade-off if you do end up losing it. So be careful. And in terms of the two hard breachers, if you're going to go for hatches and it's a hatch heavy site, you got to go with Hibana. If you're going to go with walls, then it's got to be Thermite for me. That's the way I like to look at it. Thermite probably has the better ability in terms of the mileage that it has when you're having to deal with walls. Hibana has the better ability in terms of mileage for hatches, and she probably has better weapons, though the bearing's been nerfed, so it's on a similar playing field now. You can really pick between the two of them. You're not going to have a bad time regardless. Just consider the site. But regardless, you will need to pick two of these people almost every single round. The chances of you not having hard breaching positions is very, very slim. So expect to see these guys in your ranked pool regardless of situation. I'm saying regardless a lot. And the top tier, creme de la creme of the attacking team, is only two operators, as I mentioned at the start. These are the immensely strong operators, and they are Nomad and Sophia. We'll cover Nomad first. Her weapons are very lackluster, I'll get that out of the way. If it was based on her weapon suite to determine how strong she was, she would definitely be around about always viable, maybe even usually viable. Her weapons are not strong in the slightest. The AK has a ridiculous amount of recoil for damage that's just not impressive, and the only real good thing about it is the fact that it has a big magazine at 40 rounds. And the ARX has one of the slowest animations in the game for its reload, especially for the full reload, which is painfully slow. I'd rather be reloading an LMG because at least I know I'd get more than 20 rounds at the end of it. But it deals decent damage, it behaves a little bit like Hibana's Type 89, but it's still bad. So for me, you got to take the AK. But the thing that really matters about Nomad, and the only thing you have to concern yourself when you're deciding to pick her, is regarding the air jabs. What a gadget. It's a crazy gadget. Any gadget that can take someone out of the game for a period of time and basically stop them from doing anything at all is strong. There's no doubt about it. You cannot argue against this. If you can just delete someone for a minute, get them to have a seat, that will do the job well, and that will make you feel proud to be carrying this random Moroccan woman with access to technology that she used to throw animals off of cliffs safely or something stupid like that. It's just good. It's very strong. It's very frustrating to play against, and the counterplay is minimal, because the only thing you can really do to counter the gadget, if it's been placed properly, is to use explosives. And not everyone, especially not late into the round, is going to have explosives. So if you're in a post-plant situation and the defenders don't have impacts or nitros, you're pretty much saying goodnight to that team, because the moment they walk into the line of sight of the air jab, they're going to be on their arse, they're going to be defenseless, and soon enough, no thanks to your weapons unfortunately, they're going to be dead. Round winning, round securing, game breaking, it's arguable, definitely there. One of the strongest, if not the strongest gadget on attack, without a doubt. And then the last one is Zofia. Zofia is so underrated, it's unbelievable, and people need to come to terms with the fact that she is just better than Ashe. I don't care how fast Ashe is, I don't care how small Ashe is, and I don't care how much you like your R4C. She is not better than Zofia. Zofia is a value cannon, and that cannot be argued against. She brings a impact launcher that basically does Ashe's job but quicker and more sneakily, basically, because you're not having to sit there and listen to the drill bit go off before the wall explodes. The wall is just gone, and people don't have time to prep for that. So that's one reason why she's better. Second reason why she's better is she doesn't have to reload after she does that, so she can immediately follow up with a second hole. And the third reason why she's better is the fact that she also has 2 concussion mines, which have the same effect as a Geshmot mine, and everybody knows that Geshmot mines are an absolute bitch to deal with, especially when they were prominently used when Ela was a ridiculous operator to go against. Geshmot mines disorientate, they make you deaf for a minute, which is huge in a game that relies so much on sound for its intel, and they also blur your screen and just make everything difficult to see. So that's another reason why she's good. The fourth reason why she's better than Ashe is the fact that she can withstand those Geshmot stuns herself. So if Ela ever comes back to prominence, and if we're to believe anything, the chances are she will be buffed again, and she will be back in the fray as a roamer again, and she's still being used with that shotgun in the moment. If you get hit by a Geshmot mine, the stun effect is